Alright, welcome back to another video. So, this weekend we see Arsenal take on Manchester City in what could be one of the biggest games in the title race. Last season, Arsenal and Man City went head to head for the title. Man City came out victorious in the end by about 8 points, but Arsenal took them quite close, ultimately falling short. And two of the key reasons were the two games that they played against each other, where Arsenal picked up 0 points from the available 6. This season, it's quite clear that they've got to do a lot more, and this Sunday represents a great opportunity for them to do so at the Emirates. Man City without Rodri, who's suspended, Kevin De Bruyne, who's injured, and Stones, who's injured, three of their key players, two of whom who haven't even featured really this season. For Arsenal, they're without key players of their own. Martinelli looks to miss out. Saka himself may not make it. It's going to be a big game for sure. I thought, with that being probably the biggest game this weekend, why not do a combined 11 for the two sides? Let's see how I do. Obviously, it's going to be quite difficult. Some big names are probably going to miss out. So do give me shouts in the comments below what your combined 11 would be. Take a look at mine coming up now as well. And if there's anything you disagree with, make it known kindly. But yeah, let's start with the goalkeeping position. I don't think there's a huge amount of debate for this one. I think it's a relatively straightforward decision to put Ederson in goal. That might sound a little controversial at first because Arsenal's goalkeeping options aren't bad, are they? But that's the thing. For them, it's options, and I think they don't even seem to have a fixed number one in terms of the Raya Ramsdale situation. Raya certainly looks the favourite at the moment, but we don't want to write off Ramsdale yet. Both going to be vying for that number one spot for Arsenal, and for me, I think that consistency, the experience of Ederson, we've seen him do it for City for seasons out. Has a bit of a mistake in him sometimes, but he's generally been quite solid, keeps a lot of clean sheets. So for me, I think he's got to be the number one pick. I think he's also quite forward thinking as a goalkeeper, often setting up attacks for City and getting them going, quite comfortable getting it out from the back. So Ederson for me is the clear number one if I have to pick one from the goalkeeping options for them. Moving to defence, I'm making this slightly easier for myself, I should say, by trying to pick from players that have featured this season. So this is the 23-24 season being the main focus, while giving some consideration obviously to their past performances. And for that reason, that means the likes of Stones and Kevin De Bruyne are going to miss out because they haven't featured yet this season. And that removes a couple of headaches for me, I suppose. But then, for example, the likes of Martinelli, who's a doubt for this game, Rodri, for example, suspended, they will feature in my considerations for this team. So I've gone for 3-2-4-1. Both teams seem to do this kind of 4-3-3 with, someone stepping into the midfield from the back. For City, actually, they do the 3-2-4-1. It seems more, especially with the emergence of Alvarez, who comes into that kind of form and plays behind the striker as well. He's definitely one who's going to be key for me. But starting with this back three, I think in this kind of right centre back position, I think I have to go for Walker. For me, he is just a very, very solid player. He's done it for so many years now. Perhaps gone a bit under the radar to some for a while, but he is very, very reliable, very fast still, despite getting a bit older now. And yeah, a reliable pick for both Man City and for the England, starting 11. So for me, he gets in here. And, if we're assuming we've got three at the back rather than the standard four, because I'm pushing someone extra into the, in the midfield, he's kind of got that. He's got the pace to cover, essentially. I'm going to go with him to be the man to kind of cover more, and then look for two more defensive, more typical centre-back options for the other two slots, which, saying that I'm going to pick two centre-backs, I suppose it shouldn't be too big a surprise that I'm going to go for kind of the stronger ones from each side. I think honourable mentions would be the likes of Vardiol. Ake has been solid for City as well. Gabriel Magalhaes is obviously a good option for Arsenal, but if you had to name both sides kind of, almost leaders at the back and their most reliable players, these are the kind of guys you want in your team. And for me, that has to be William Saliba and Ruben Dias filling out the back of this team. I think a very kind of strong back three there. Two leaders on the left side as well. We've got Walker, very, very experienced as well, and the pace to cover. and having kind of one man less in the defence. So for me, these are the ones I'm going with. Then into the two CDM positions, I think having two DMs here, obviously, like I say, in terms of, depends how you're looking at it. If you're looking at it kind of like the teams that do that inverted fullback, you're thinking this is probably the kind of position I would have looked at someone like Stones, or I think Zinchenko does it for Arsenal as well. But for me, I'm going to go straight with two DMs here. And I think two of the best DMs in the league. Got Rodri, obviously suspended this weekend, but a very, very solid option. He's actually stepped up a bit more in terms of popping up with key goals as well. So even more than just the defensive side that he's very well known for. Key goals for Man City last season, scoring the winner of the Champions League final, and this season filling that void that was left by Gundogan, kind of the reliable guy for City to pop up with those goals. It looks like that's an area of Rodri's game he's going to add to, and it will certainly be a big miss for this game. And of course, the other one's got to be Declan Rice. Solid option, very young, very high potential for him. Big money was spent, and he's been solid for Arsenal so far. It's been a good start for his Arsenal career. And yeah, I think these two as defensive midfielders, hopefully not a lot gets past them anyway, and you can afford to go one lighter at the back. Moving into kind of the four attacking positions here, I'm going to start on the right because I think for me, it's got to be Arsenal star boy, Bukayo Saka. Quality player, great guy as well. And yeah, he's just very, very dangerous. He's going to be potentially a big miss for Arsenal if they can't get him fit for this weekend. Why they maybe didn't rest him, I'm not sure. I know away to Lions was a big game in the Champions League to kind of keep the momentum going there, but they lost the game anyway. He did come off injured. I would have considered resting him again, ahead of such a huge game like this, trying to manage his minutes, as he did seem to be kind of carrying a slight injury over the last few weeks, but he is key to a lot of Arsenal's success. He's got a lot of pressure on his shoulders at such a young age, but what a player he is, and incredible strike in his locker as well, as we've seen already early this season. Then yeah, going into these kind of central positions behind the striker, I'm going to go with Odegaard from Arsenal here. I think many people would say Arsenal's best player, which, considering the praise we just had for Saka, says a lot, really. He's Arsenal's captain. Didn't quite work out for him at Real Madrid, but since he's come to Arsenal, he's really, really upped his game, and very, very strong creative force in their midfield, creates a lot of opportunities for them, and I think a big danger man. He's one of the criticism, I suppose, of him was that in big games last season, he didn't quite step up to the mark for Arsenal at times. This is an opportunity for him to kind of silence those haters, right the wrongs, if you like, and really, really try and put in a shift and try and dictate the flow of this game, particularly if Arsenal are going to be without Saka and potentially other key players. The other one for me has to be Julian Alvarez. I think this guy has been an incredible signing for Man City. The fact that they have him and Haaland is quite unfair. It's quite cruel to the rest of the league, really. He's a striker that could honestly start for probably most 11s in the league, and the fact that City have him as a second option to Haaland is crazy. But he's managed to step beyond just being in Haaland's shadow in that sense. This season, he's been starting a lot of the games in the absence of Kevin De Bruyne, and I'd argue he's been City's best player because Haaland, you know what you're going to get from him. He's a real marksman. He's going to score a lot of goals, get himself in the right place a lot of the time. But Alvarez has pulled the strings in a lot of ways. He's gotten really, really involved in games and attacks, and he's pulled his weight in both goals and assists so far. Looks a real talent. So he's certainly going to be one to watch this weekend. I believe he was rested in the midweek in the Champions League as well. I don't think he started against Leipzig, so potentially fresh legs for him could spell trouble for Arsenal. And speaking of Arsenal, I am going to go for an Arsenal player on the left here in Martinelli. This is a position where I did find it quite tough, actually, to pick one. Oh, right. So just as I selected Martinelli there, the site I'm using kind of crashed for a minute. Guessing it doesn't agree with the choice of Martinelli, as I'm sure maybe a few others might not. But For me, I've gone for Martinelli just because I think this guy's a very dangerous attacker. I've seen him run riot against Liverpool quite a few times, even over the last few years when, okay, other than last season, perhaps, when we were running over Arsenal on a regular basis, like Martinelli was still a danger man and a great option for them. So I've seen that firsthand, but also just in general, one of their kind of key players gets a good goal assist tally by the end of the season. He's regularly involved in the attacking play. He's direct. He's got the skills as well. I think he's got a good work rate. So this is a good option for me. Obviously, Grealish has been injured for a while, so he's a different style of player too. A bit more possession based, kind of trying to hold the ball a bit more. That's a lot of his strength is winning fouls of the opposition as well. Then when you're looking at maybe two players who's been performing well for City this season who could go into that position, we're looking at Foden and Doku. So for me, Doku is probably the one I would have been leaning towards most, but he's quite new. I do want to see more of him before I would consider putting him over Martinelli, for example, in the slot. But he does look very dangerous. He's very quick, and I think as we saw with his goal against West Ham, like can also be that kind of direct option. Gives City something a little different off that left side. But Foden as well, a good player, but also as Pep himself finds, it's like, where do you fit him in? He could have gone on the left here. He could have, if I'd done a 4-3-3, maybe slotted into a midfield position. But yeah, I think for me, I'm happy to stick Martinelli in there. And then we go up to the striker position where there's no doubt, I think, in anyone's mind. Arsenal's options are Jesus and Nketiah. Obviously, for City, their other option is Alvarez, but I've found a way to put him in, as Pep does as well, because he's so good. But Haaland there's not enough you can say about him. He's a top option, a goal scoring absolute machine. You think to games as well where he kind of almost goes spy a little bit, doesn't get too involved in play, and then just out of nowhere will still come in and get a goal. Literally against Fulham this season, I think he barely had any touches, still goes and bangs a hat trick. You can't not have him in your team, as I have found as an FPL manager. Despite his heavy price tag on FPL and wanting to kind of tug him out, you can't take that risk because he's going to get goals, so he's going to get you points. But that is my Arsenal City combined 11. So in the end, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 City players and 5 Arsenal players. I can't lie, that's closer than I thought it would be. I did think this would be a mostly City-dominated side, but perhaps the injuries to De Bruyne and Stones do that to this team. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you agree with this kind of lineup? Do you disagree? What would you change? Who would you put in your starting 11? And take care.